Hi everyone, welcome to Serotonin. My name is Andrea, and today I will be recording an audio version of an article for those who prefer to listen to podcasts. In this article that I wrote, I go into detail about two of my favorite albums, Voicenotes by Charlie Puth and Tolerance by FIGHTMASTER. These albums mean the world to me, and I had a blast going on a deep dive, doing research, and making my own analyses on them. I hope you enjoy listening to this as much as I enjoyed writing it. Voicenotes, Charlie Puth. In my opinion, this album is the definition of pop perfection. I'm not saying that just because it has well-known singles in it. For example, Attention and How Long. But Charlie himself even strived for it to be perfect. In 2018, the album was supposed to be released on January 19th, but he actually delayed the release of the album by almost 4 months because he really wanted to make sure that it was to his standards. Even then, he still worked on the production of the album until just mere hours before the new release date, which was set as May 11th. This album marked a very noticeable peak in Charlie's career. The singles on this album remain as some of his most streamed songs, even to this day. On average, Attention gets about 1 million streams a day, and How Long about 300,000. These songs are unforgettable hits that really mark that era in the pop music world. In a video titled Voicenotes Behind the Song Part 1 on YouTube, Charlie talks about how Attention was the foundation for the rest of the album. He said, "Attention laid the groundwork for this entire album as far as I'm concerned. It really kind of put me into a new musical place where I've always wanted to be." Fun fact, Attention started as a more classical piece. It was originally set in a much higher register and had a significantly slower BPM, beats per minute. Charlie put a lot of time into perfecting this song in particular. It took him about 6 to 12 months for him to get the production right. But in the end, he ended up creating one of the biggest hits of the 2010s and has continued to write impactful songs that will be remembered for generations to come. Speaking about impactful songs, there is one song in particular on the album that Charlie dedicated to the people who participated in March for Our Lives and the victims of gun violence at a school in Parkland, Florida. The song, Change, wasn't originally written about the shooting, but Charlie believed that the lyrics deeply resonated with everyone and said that there needs to be an overall change in the world. He performed the song for the very first time at the march and gave it his all, delivering one of the most heartfelt performances he's ever done. One of my favorite lyrics in the song is, "But I know that the world will change the day we know we're all the same." These lyrics are so special to me because nearly everyone can relate to them. It emphasizes the idea that no song only has one meaning. In every way possible, if everyone were to be more accepting of each other, the world would be such a different and happier place. I'm a big fan of this album as a whole, but about half of the songs on this album are in constant rotation when I'm listening to music. The songs are The Way I Am, Attention, LA Girls, How Long, Slow It Down, and Empty Cups. These songs, in my opinion, are the most like each other in terms of the album as a whole, and it is so unbelievably satisfying hearing them play back to back. Plus, no matter how many times I listen to these songs, I will never get sick of them. Ironically though, my favorite song from the album is not on this list. It's mainly because it doesn't match the vibe of the other songs, but also, I don't think I could listen to a sadder, emotional ballad as often as I do the others. My favorite song on this album is called Through It All. It's an elegant ballad where Charlie reflects on all of the difficult experiences he's had in his life. I usually only listen to this song when I feel like I need a bit of emotional support, when I'm going through something hard. What I love about this song is when I'm listening to it, I feel like my emotions are being validated, while the lyrics are also lifting me up. The slow buildup of the instruments throughout the song kind of give it a more hopeful vibe. So the more I listen to it, usually the better I feel emotionally. Another fun fact. Charlie is a really big fan of jazz music. So he finds ways to include jazzy elements into his songs. Yes, even his pop songs, to trick people into liking jazz. It's not a direct quote because he said this at one of his concerts that I went to, and unfortunately I didn't get a video of it, so I'm saying this purely from memory. Charlie is one of the most musical people of his generation of artists. People often give him a bad time about his perfect pitch, but it really plays a big role of who he is as a musician. The story about how he discovered that he has perfect pitch is actually quite special. He said that when he was younger, his mother would play the same song nearly every morning on the piano, and that's what he almost always woke up to. He thinks that since he heard the song so frequently, it allowed him to memorize the notes, and subconsciously, it translated into his perfect pitch ability. Not only does he know how to play music well, but he is also extremely well versed in music knowledge. In all the interviews I've watched of his, he almost always has a fact or two about songs that are brought up right at the moment, either by himself or the interviewers. I can't even imagine the hours of studying he's had to do to be able to do that. Anyway, I will end this section by saying, go listen to Voicenotes if you haven't yet. I know that nearly everyone listening to this probably already knows a few of the songs on there, but I promise that there are many underrated album tracks that you will love. Next up, Tolerance by FIGHTMASTER. This album may be one of the most deeply poetic albums that I've ever listened to. It's been on repeat for me since its release at the beginning of June this year. From start to finish, the album is filled with vulnerable and honest lyrics that reflect real experiences throughout FIGHTMASTER or their peers' lives. When talking about the album, they said, "Every song that I write is in some way a personal experience. But here, I was mining a broader understanding of patterns throughout a lifetime. Patterns of loving different people. Patterns of watching my friends love each other." A lot of the lyrics on this album are jarring. I can't even count the amount of times that I gasped when reacting to this album for the first time. For example, the first song of the album, called Move Through, begins with the lyrics, "So you don't want to marry me? Well, alright. I'll sell the ring back to the jeweler. I'll go missing in the night." These lyrics indicate that the narrator had someone in their life that said no to their proposal. For anyone, this would be devastatingly tragic. But for the narrator, they show that you can experience a tragic event and still give the person involved grace. This is a direct quote where FIGHTMASTER talks about the fourth track on the album, Press Release. "At the time, I could barely tolerate being the villain in my ex's story because I thought, that's not true. We loved each other. It doesn't have to be this way." They explain. "But then I thought about the grace required to let someone leave with whatever story they need to survive the leaving. If I just tolerated it instead, could I move through it more gracefully?" That's what makes the title of this album so special. There was unquestionably so much thought and intention that went behind the naming process. Another lyric in the song Move Through is, "How many ways can we set each other free?" FIGHTMASTER speaks about how this lyric is their favorite in the entire album, and ever since listening to it, I've been trying to figure out why that may be. But there are so many ways that the lyric could be interpreted that I haven't been able to land on just one meaning. My favorite song on the album is called Plan of Attack for Dying, which may sound a bit brutal just from looking at the title, but the song inevitably has real substance. The narrator in this song speaks about their partner being so at peace with death, and them trying not to let it hurt their feelings. Personally, I don't think I've ever heard a song that talks about grief that has yet to be experienced in such a raw way as much as this song does. What's clever about this song in particular is how they present the concept of grief in the second verse. Instead of saying that it's their own grief, they say that a monkey on their back is experiencing it, which ultimately weighs them down. The exact verse sounds like this. I've got a monkey on my back, and he grieves before I'm ready. The grieving makes him stronger, but the grieving makes him heavy. I try my best to lose him. He says he isn't ready, and that's all right. There's pride in not forgetting. The phrase, I've got a monkey on my back, comes from the original expression, have a monkey on the roof, which was a reference to mortgage that goes back to the 1800s. In this context, though, they use this phrase to talk about burden, indicating that they can't really control when they experience grief. They end this verse in a very beautiful way, basically saying that there's nothing to be ashamed in regards to experiencing grief, whenever it may be. As someone who struggles a lot with accepting the future reality of death in regards to the people closest to me, hearing these words makes me feel less alone, knowing that I'm not the only one that has a hard time processing these feelings. These next lines appear in the first verse of the song, and they're actually my favorite lyrics in the entire album. They are, I'll be calling your name in the great beyond while you're rolling your eyes with your halo on. The lyrics are so sad, but they're written in such a clever way that you just can't help but smile and laugh a little. At least that's how I feel every time I listen to it. This album truly embodies FIGHTMASTER and their desire to grow and mature emotionally. They have always been one to feel intense emotions and let their rage out through their music, as seen in past songs like Bloodshed Baby and Brick by Brick, which can be both found on their EP Bloodshed Baby that they released in 2024. Nothing has changed about them in that sense, except for the approach when writing about more intense topics. They're trying now to give more grace to people and to tolerate them instead of outwardly expressing how they feel. I ended this article with this last quote from them. Tolerance can be a very violent word, they say. When you're talking about inclusivity and you're asking people to be tolerant of others, the understanding here is like we have to stomach someone else's existence. As I age, I just find that there are less and less actual villains in the stories that we have about ourselves and about each other. I just wanted to see if we really centered ourselves in the idea that everyone's doing their best, what happens? I hope that I convince anyone who's listening to this to check out FIGHTMASTER's album. The album is incredibly inspiring, and that I hope to have their kind of mindful understanding one day. FIGHTMASTER is setting a wonderful example for the younger generation with this record, and it truly deserves all the streams that it can get. I hope that I did it justice with this short analysis. I'm very aware that you were probably expecting more albums to be on this list, but it wouldn't have been an honest one if I had more, because I wouldn't have been able to talk about them as in detail as I did with these two albums. Because in the end of the day, for me, these albums top any other albums that I've ever listened to. Knowing these albums has changed my life in ways that are so hard to explain, but I really tried my best to put my thoughts into words in this article. I hope in the end I was able to relate my feelings to all of you. Thank you so much for listening.